Hi, welcome back. This is Matt, and this is the fourth module in Implement a Search-Based Site Directory. In this module, we get to do the stuff that I really enjoy doing, and that's actually building out the search user interface. So we're going to focus on refiners and display templates in this session. So what we've done up to now in the first three modules is establish a content type that we're going to search for. We're going to use that specific content type by creating managed properties that are associated with the metadata in that content type, and we have populated the lists. So now we're ready to start doing our searches. The question you have to ask yourself is, why do you need a display template? And a lot of folks don't quite understand where the display templates fall in this part of the search solution. If you need a visual cue that'll help improve the search results, then you need a display template. If you want to make the search results more actionable, for instance, if you want to put a phone number on there so that your salespeople can use click to call with their IP phone sets, then you can do that with the search result. You can also add relevant data. So for example, in our example, where we're using the site catalog item, we can put in the metadata from the site catalog about confidentiality and security and categorization, and put all of that in the display template to make it more relevant to the user that found that result. So some examples. I have a customer database that I'm crawling with BCS, and this is what the results look like out of the box. I think they look pretty, well, vanilla. I think this looks much better. I call this my rich customer, but essentially what I'm doing is I'm using all of the metadata that I have associated with that customer. I'm rendering a beautiful result, but I'm also showing the hover cards with the map to the location of that particular customer. Another example would be using colors or images to represent the data in the search result. So if I have a partner level, which is bronze, silver, and gold, and I use an out-of-the-box text refiner, it's going to look like this. I'd much rather have it be colored, and it actually takes up a little less screen space this way. Or if you're in Olympic mood, we can use metals. Click on any of the metals, it'll further refine your results by that particular partner level. You also have the option for graphs or charts. There's a out-of-the-box slider with bar graph that we'll show you in a little bit that shows you numeric information. So I can control the number of slices that I show. I can control whether the slider shows or the bar graph and slider show. And I can even add jQuery to do sort of a frequency distribution if I want and render a pie chart. Now, when I look at a search results page, it's important to understand the anatomy and where each of the display templates play in a default search results page. So here is a search results page showing all of the different components that you might encounter while you're working. First, we have the controls. So the search box control, the refinement control, the search results control, and the search paging control are all display templates that can be modified if you want to. Next are the refinement items themselves, and these are called filters if you look on the file system. Then there are group elements. In this case, this is a horizontal grouping element that contains 4 discrete item display templates within it. And then, of course, the item display templates themselves. And finally, not really part of the control system itself, but referenced by the item display template are the item hover cards. So specific item display templates may or may not have a hover card. In this case, this one does. So here we go. Let's build out some refinement and display templates and add that to our experience. If we start in the Search Center and we are looking for specific content to make sure that our managed properties are working, you'll notice that we have our managed properties like site description, site confidential, and that kind of thing. We can always find our content type by using the SP content type equals the full name of our content type. And there it is, the search demo site item that is in our search demo site list. So each of these metadata properties should be retrievable based on how you set up your content type and your manage property. So if I use site manager : Matthew, that contains my name, and so it brings back our site catalog item. We can also do site classification : demo star, and that means it contains demo, or in our case, demonstration. The site security level equals low, same thing. Now it's not very impressive because we're only seeing one item at a time, because there's only one item in our list. So having additional content can really help you as you're building out your search solution and your refiners. In this case, I'm going to edit the page and edit the refinement web part on our site catalog results page. Choose refiners, and this brings up what I call the refiner designer. And it's not really a designer so much as a picker in a dialog. Here we have a list of our available refiners, which we have to use the refinable string names because it doesn't reflect the aliases that we implemented when we created the refinable properties. So we'll go down, we'll find refinable string 00, 01, etc. And you can actually see there's demonstration data in there. There's the data from the search results. So I'm just making sure that I know which refinable property is related to which crawled property, and then move them up to kind of clean up the user interface. And then we'll get rid of the ones we don't need. I might as well keep last modified time because that's going to be the timestamp on the item. There we go. So we've got our refinable strings in place. Let's do a little bit more editing. This one's the site owner or manager, I think we called it. This one's the site classification. Site security. And finally, site confidential. So we'll just make sure everything's working the way that we expect for our single property. Some of the properties have additional things like dates and stuff, but make sure you click that OK button to close the dialog, and then the OK button on the web part, and then check in the page. And then publish it. So now when we execute our search, we can use a star since we know we're only getting site catalogs back, and you'll see that we have our metadata. Now it's only one item, it's not terribly impressive. So what we can do is we can go back to the site information list and we can add more data. So I used a script, I added more data. It doesn't matter right now while we're prototyping, but now once the crawl completes, I can execute my search and I can get a whole bunch of search results back. That looks awesome. Now what I can do is test out my refinement. Site security high gives me one item. Site security low, classification 7-year retention. Site manager Matthew McDermott, just one item. So what we're demonstrating is how great the experience is filtering. What I want to do now is make these search results look better. And we do that by using a display template. So I'm going to go into Design Manager. In Design Manager, I'm going to choose Upload Design Files. This will allow me to open in Explorer View or in Windows Explorer the site catalogs and the master page gallery for display templates. Now, filters and content web parts, we'll cover those later. In our case, we're going to use the search directory. And then here are the controls that I mentioned earlier. Here's the group template. And then, of course, all the rest of these are item templates. We're going to focus on the site template because the item site HTML and item site hover panel, they display sites the way that we want. So it's a good starting point. I'm simply going to copy these over to my local computer so that I can modify them. You should never modify the out-of-the-box templates. I'll open the item site HTML file and I'll rename it. I'm going to rename it item site catalog, and then the hover panel we'll call item site catalog hover panel. This is just a naming convention that we're sticking with because that's the way SharePoint does it. Now, we want to edit these files and change the title. The reason for this is when it gets uploaded, this title is going to stick with it. The next thing we have to do is attend to the managed property mapping. This is where we're going to indicate which fields we want SharePoint to request as part of this query. So here are all of our fields that we created earlier. And so I'm simply going to copy these in, and then they become part of the context of the current item so that I can request them and display them. So I go very methodically at this point because I want to make sure that I attend to any errors immediately. So we're just going to add the first property, which is site description, and then we'll make sure we put the commas in the right place. Then what I'm going to do is go down just under render body. Again, we're just testing, so I'm going to simply come down here under the render body tag, and we'll insert the code that will display the site description property for us. Then we're going to save that file. And notice the hover URL. Well, it's referencing the old site hover panel. So let's update that as well. And now we have the connection between our new item site catalog and the item site catalog hover. And all we have to do is copy them back up. Now notice that there are two files of the same name but different extensions. This is the HTML file and the JavaScript sister file that goes with it. By uploading the HTML file, what SharePoint will do is generate the sister file automatically for us. So here are my two files. If I click refresh, then what I'll see when I locate my files is I should see that I now have site catalog HTML and JS. You never edit the JS file. You always leave that alone and let SharePoint recreate it. Now what we have to do to get SharePoint to use our file is we have to create a result type rule. Now the result type rule takes a name, and then it takes a condition upon which it will apply your display template. So if you're going to create a display template, you need to create a result type rule. So here we'll give it a name, and we'll source this on all SharePoint results. And I'll show you the problem you may run into doing this, but there's a reason why I like to do this. Now, none of these values work for us, so we have to create our own rule. But what we are going to do is select our site catalog item here in just a moment. The other problem we run into is that this property selector does not include that wonderful SP content type property. It's not in there. So what I'm going to have to do instead is use a different property. In my case, I'll either use content type or I'll use content type ID. Now, content type ID is great because it's very specific, but if you look through the rest of this list, you'll see there is no SP content type. Even if I go down to the SPs, there's just no SP content type. Don't ask me why, it's just not there. All right, so let's do this. Let's grab the content type ID, and then let me show you how to find the content type ID to use in your query. I'm going to choose starts with any of because I'm going to give it a prefix, and then any child content types will come up. How do you find the content type ID? It's actually really easy. Just go into your content types. In our case, we have the enterprise content types. Find your content type and edit it. Just click on the link. And then look up in the URL. Right here is the content type ID. Take the entire string. Go back into your result type and enter that. So now we have a solid query. It's very specific for our type of content. There's our site catalog item, and we see the name of our site catalog item.js file. Now, how do I know, or how can I test that? Well, I'll do a full post on this particular tool, but this is an outstanding tool for testing your queries and for getting some deep insight into what the SharePoint search engine is returning. So let me show you another trick here. We're going to go ahead and log into our site. We'll authenticate as a different user. And we'll set this for SharePoint Online. So I can now sign in to SharePoint Online. And once I'm successfully logged in, I can execute a query. So let's use that SP content type trick again. And I'll be looking for my site catalog item. When I run the query and jump over to primary results, I'll see the exact same results that I saw in the user interface. And you'll notice there is my content type ID with more content at the end. So all I'm really caring about is the beginning of the content type ID. Now I can also add additional properties in here if I'm trying to troubleshoot and look for other properties like content type. I can do that. Or SP content type. But you do not always get the SP content type back when you request it. So you'll notice here I have the content type of site catalog item, but I don't have an SP content type. But you remember, it still worked. So I'll do some more with that tool later, but for now, let's just go ahead and save and move on. So we've got our new site catalog item result type. In order to test it, we just need to go to the Search Center and execute our search again. And so there it is. The very first hit has that new site description on it, and it has the little site logo. So now what we can do is start building out our user interface. With that search site demo, if I jump over and look at some of these other ones, you see site description is showing up on each. If I go to site catalog, it doesn't show up. And it doesn't show up because we chose the source, local SharePoint results, and that sort of pinned it to the Everything tab. I wanted to show that if you chose a different scope for your rule, then you would be able to have it show up on every tab. But if your requirements are such that you don't want it to show up on every tab, there's another trick that you can do specifically on the site catalog page, and I wanted to show you that. Once you're editing the page, edit the search results web part. And there's an option under display templates to either use the result types from the result type rules, or to use a single template for all of the items. And in this case, since all of our items are only one type, then we can choose site catalog item. So again, if when I created the rule, I chose all sources, I wouldn't need to do this. But I wanted to show you that there's two ways for you to affect the search results and apply a display template if you want it. So again, we'll come back here. We'll just use star this time because everything on this page is going to be a site catalog item, and there are our results. They're pretty raw right now, but let me spend a little bit of time modifying these. I'll show you one more time how we get the search results in there. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and open this site catalog item directly out of SharePoint. If you notice in the URL, I'm connected to my SharePoint site in Office 365. And so when I edit this page to add the new Manage Property Mapping, it's going directly to that master page gallery in SharePoint Online. So we'll do the same thing. We'll just add another set of fields. In this case, we'll do Site Department. We'll save it. That's going to save it all the way back to Office 365. And now what I should be able to do refresh my search page and start seeing new data. There we go, Site Department. So the process is the same no matter what you're doing with your results. Decide from a design perspective how you want them to look. Add the managed properties to support that look. Add the fields that you want to view. Or use those fields in markup. So for example, right now I'm going to display the site logo and site link, but I'm not going to display them in the final result. I'm just doing this for debugging. The final result, I'm going to show the actual site logo as an image, and I'm going to provide a link to the site. But for now, for debugging, we'll just go ahead and add them. So there you go. You see all of the information that we need. I'm going to start building this out. I'm going to stop talking. This is going to go pretty fast, but I'm just going to build up the rest of the user interface. Okay, so we've got our user interface built. We have all the fields present, but that's not how we want it to look. This is how we want it to look. So all I did was update that file and added CSS and added HTML so that I have this public presentation, because that's low priority and public. I have a medium one that's also public, and I have other fields here that are being shown, like department and site manager. Later on, I'll show you how we can use those in other very cool ways. But like Project Thunderball, right away you know that Project Thunderball is different. You also know that Project X-Ray, you may notice that its preview is different from the others, and that's because the link to the page that I provided is not the homepage link. It's a different page. And that's one of the features of this site catalog that I really like, is I can have a different page in view in the thumbnail. So there you have it, using refiners to allow your end users to filter and select the exact results they want based on the metadata that's returned in those results, and then using HTML and JavaScript to create beautiful user interfaces. Well, hopefully you'll hire a designer, because I didn't, and have that designer help you build a beautiful user interface using JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. In the next segment, we're going to cover query rules and how you can use query rules to help your users find exactly what they're looking for.